Hi friends, welcome back to Dip Clinic. If you're new to the channel, my name's Mike and I'm a cognitive behavioural therapist and first year trainee doctor in psychology. Today I wanted to address a comment that I recently heard by a lecturer in the UK that therapists shouldn't be practicing if they're under the age of 30. Let's get started. So when I first heard this statement by a lecturer who's meant to be supporting young people in their journey towards becoming psychotherapists and counsellors, I was a little bit frustrated. As some of you may know, I've been working in private practice as a therapist from the age of 23, and so I fall quite below that age cutoff of 30. Now, I think it's important to address a few of the underlying assumptions that's being made within this comment, and I'm also going to give a little bit of my insight from being a younger therapist. So I think the first assumption that's being made here is that life experience equals better therapists. Now, this is a comment that you'll hear very often, be it from supervisors, colleagues, friends, and family, and I don't really understand what that means. When we're talking about life experience, we're usually discussing what you've done, the things that you've learned, and the development that you've made. And I think that by saying that younger therapists don't particularly have life experience, you're really stripping them of what they've been able to accomplish, what they've experienced, what they've done. And to me, it sounds like that they've had no difficulties that they've had to work through. Now, certainly I can really only speak for myself here, but I think it's fair to say that I've had my fair share of difficulties and challenges throughout both my professional and my personal career. And I think that that assumption that nobody's going to have that life experience up until the age of 30 is just quite unfair and also quite unrealistic. I think that the second assumption that's being made here is that a lack of life experience means that you can't relate to other people. Now, I certainly remember when I first started training and working in psychology, I was working with older clients who were upwards of 30, 40, 50, and even 60. And certainly when you're working with those individuals, it can be a little bit scary because you think that if somebody is a little bit older, maybe they won't be able to relate to you, and also maybe you won't be able to relate to them. But there's a really great quote that I really love, and that's that a therapist is not judged on what they do for someone, but rather who they are for someone. And so I think the personality, characteristics, and qualities that you have are really formed well before this idea of life experience. And if anything, maybe certainly you will gain further life experience as you go past 30, but I don't necessarily think that that's going to correlate to being a better therapist or meaning that you're better able to work with individuals. And this brings us really onto our third assumption, which is that if you're younger than 30, you're immature, don't have the experience to do things that you want to do and be able to help people. Now, I think this is really a social phenomenon that we tend to perceive that the older we get, the wiser that we are, the more information and knowledge we have. But when we're thinking in terms of therapy, we're really thinking in terms of the approach. And when we're thinking about the approach, the considerations that I want to take into account is, are we using the model of therapy that's going to be suitable for this person? Are we developing an assessment and a formulation that's going to support them? And do we have the knowledge of the interventions to be able to provide that person with the support that they need? And interestingly, I think there's a little bit of a double standard here, because if you look within other professions such as banking, investment, even the army and teaching, then young people aren't viewed as being unable to do the job, but rather they're learning and going through an ongoing process of gaining experience as we age, as we all do. But to say that you shouldn't be a therapist before 30 completely strips that away. And so if you do training, which will typically be from your undergraduate, so usually around 18, all the way up until you're 30 before you start practicing, you've missed out on a lot of time and a lot of experience where you could have been really honing in on your skills and developing different methods to support people. But with all that said, I think a really important factor to consider is that I certainly know a lot of young therapists and I know a lot of older therapists. And from what I know of the colleagues I've worked with, there's no particular correlation between the outcomes of our clients and the therapist's age. And possibly I think that you can make the argument that maybe younger therapists have access to more technological information, resources, and are more up to date on their continued professional development. In many other careers, there's this very typical stereotype that when you've been doing a job for a very long time, you get quite stagnant and you don't have the same necessarily the abilities or the enjoyment or the passion for working in that role. Whereas if you're starting out in therapy from the age of, say, 25 to 30, you're going to be quite excited about what you're doing. And so just to throw my comments into the ring, I think that this statement is really harmful. Not only does it stop younger people from wanting to experience and work in therapy, but it also puts a cast of doubt in our client's mind that a younger therapist won't be able to support them. But talking from personal experience, I've worked with hundreds, if not maybe now thousands of individuals who have been supported and been able to overcome their anxieties, their depression, their suicidal thoughts, and their self-harm because I was able to facilitate a cognitive behavioural therapy treatment for them. And ultimately, if that's not the most important component of the therapeutic process, then I think we really need to question ourselves on what we're actually doing. And so I hope moving forward that we can provide a little bit more support for our younger trainees and our younger therapists. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts below in the comments, so do feel free to leave them below. Once again, I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and please feel free to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Now that some of you may realise that we're in a slightly different setup, we're going to be having more videos coming out on psychology and therapy content coming soon. As always, stay safe, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care.